Hello, welcome to the Chain Mountain Podcast. I'm your host, Hank Ackerman. Today I sit down with Jason Lhota, the general manager at Cadrex Manufacturing Solutions, and a longtime friend of mine. We have a wide-ranging conversation about the current state and future of American manufacturing. We dive into how the industry is evolving and the role that mentorship plays in shaping the next generation of talent. We also talk about how automation and AI are changing the shop floor and the skills gap that so many companies are facing. So now, more than ever, effective leadership is more important. Jason and I also explore the challenges and opportunities around reshoring jobs back to the US, and even touch on the surprising possibility of a resurgence in nuclear energy as a reliable power source. Throughout our discussion, one theme kept coming up again and again: the critical role of policy and investment in shaping the future of U.S. manufacturing. It's an insightful, forward-looking conversation that I think you're really going to enjoy. All right, Jason, let's jump into it. I'm going to start with a statistic. The U.S. manufacturing sector produced $2.9 trillion in GDP in 2023, right? So that's about 11% of total U.S. economic output. And that makes us the world's second largest manufacturer after China, right? In addition to that, manufactured goods make up over 77% of all of the U.S. exports in 2024, right? Including aerospace, chemicals, computers, electronics, vehicles, machinery, right? So if you think about, in my mind, I was kind of like churning over that, and I'm thinking, well, like, number one, U.S. manufacturing obviously isn't dead, right? It's still alive and kicking, right? And it's obviously a big generator of GDP. But the one that really got me was the 77% of all of the exports in 2024, right, were from U.S. manufacturing, right? So that sector, from an export perspective, still huge, and a big part of, the inner workings of the global economy. Just, first question, right? What's your hot take on that statistic, right? Are we dead, dying? Where are we going?
I'd say it's not dead. It's evolving, right? And I want to step back kind of in history and say, if you look back at the kind of the evolution of where we're at today, is companies, manufacturing is just completely different now than it was in 1967, right? I think somebody wrote somewhere like 1973 was the height of U.S. manufacturing, right?
That's right.
And so let's go back to the mid 60s. So in the mid 60s, I think you had something. I think they call it managerial capitalism, right? And you had the C-level guys in these manufacturing companies, and really in all companies, focus solely on long-term growth. What is right for the company? What is right for the town it's in? And all that. And things were going fantastic. In the 70s, you had some crisis come up, the oil embargo. You had competition really for the first time in American manufacturing from overseas, ever. Not just, since the 20s. No. This is ever, and I don't think we reacted very well with that. Then the 80s come around, and then you had the rise of what I call financialization, right? This is all about shareholder value. Cut stuff that is not making money, not making the money that we want it to make. Let's just cut it and be done with it. So you had the hollowing out in the 80s of some of these labor-intensive, low-margin types things that, frankly, Hank, you and I, we grew up on, right? I mean, you don't have the dog food manufacturer in your little town of 25,000 anymore. That's gone, right? Purina brought that to wherever location that is, and it's gone. So I would say now that you have it's evolving, and we are truly more high value add manufacturing.
Right.
I would tell you one thing that really surprises me is like the machinery portion of this, the high function tooling, things like that. that's all overseas for whatever reason. I can't figure it out. I work in metal bending now, and I came from railroad manufacturing before this. All the tooling comes from overseas. You know, if we could figure that out, I mean, that's really high end stuff. That is seven-figure type, one piece of equipment type things. So
Yeah.
I would say that right now the C level is really focused in on shareholder value. Then you have private equity, which is again in the 70s and really in the early 80s, non-existent. So that's
Get
really
into that.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'd say it's not dead, but we have a lot more State Farm agents and bankers now, right?
Yeah. For
And
sure.
a lot less manufacturing engineers and guys that um, where I grew up, Hank, we had I'd say between 1983 and 1993, those 10 years, we
Yeah.
lost about Pittsburgh lost about 300,000 manufacturing jobs.
Yeah.
That's devastating. Not
Yeah.
people, jobs.
Yeah.
So we've hollowed all that out. So what do you lose out of that? And the thing that I think we're missing today, and the thing that maybe our generation has to push back over the top is that mentorship. You know,
Yeah.
we talked about this the other day. You used to walk into a plant and a company, and the guys that were there for 10 years, right, Hank? They
Yeah.
were new.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're the new
Yeah.
guys. Oh, go to the new
A
guy over
baby.
here.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, today they're the grizzled veteran, right?
Yeah.
And that's I'm not sure it's ever going to come back, right? We're so interchangeable now, which I don't think is a good thing, right? But I do think that that mentorship means something, and that's really, again, you look at American manufacturing, and I know we're going a little bit long on this segment, but
No, this is good.
if you
No,
look at
it's
it,
good.
right, it became a race to the bottom, right?
Yeah.
And then, and like I said to you before, I worked for a company where we moved the plants from, in the late 90s, we moved the plants from the Milwaukee area, Minneapolis area, down to the Mid-South. That didn't work out. Then we moved it to the Maquiladora.
Yeah.
Then the
Yeah.
Maquiladora didn't work out, and we moved it all over to Asia.
To Asia. Yeah.
For
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. And
And now during the pandemic, I mean, because
yeah.
that was medical device stuff. Now it's like, wow, we
Yeah.
really need that on shore. We at least need it
Yeah.
on this shore. It could be in Mexico, but it
Well,
can't
I love
be in China.
so Jack Ma, right? Had a really interesting quote I liked it. He basically said, listen, China didn't take all of your manufacturing jobs,
That's
right?
correct.
You gave them to us,
Yeah.
right? It was the management and
Financialization, like I talk,
the financial, exactly.
it's crazy.
Yeah, so that to somehow, I think a lot of Americans somehow feel like, oh, China stole jobs. No. There was American businessmen in boardrooms who made the conscious decision, like you're saying, and I remember working for PE firms, and that was their process, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to buy a company, and I'm going to move it all overseas, and that's how I'm going to make money. I mean,
Yeah.
and then before that, I worked at an automation firm, and we were in textiles, and same thing happened, right? That was when textiles went straight over, and there was a huge leap. And what's interesting is, so carpet stayed behind, textiles left, and you kind of ask, well, why? They're pretty similar, right? You're weaving stuff, and the answer is in the price per pound of something. Right.
Makes sense.
If
right?
it doesn't make sense for me to logistically move it from overseas, and carpet is heavy, and they're not relatively expensive, then I'm going to keep the manufacturing here. So I think if you kind of really take a deep dive into what industries stayed and what industries left, right? There's that component which you were talking about, which is, what is the high end stuff where I'm making good margin, or there's, technological advancement, or I
Right.
don't want our IP to get stolen, right? Versus stuff that's just, putting the screws in iPhones, right?
Yeah. Or making mailboxes.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah.
U.S. mailboxes
Close.
made
Yeah,
in China.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. 90% of Walmart, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, do you remember when Walmart used to have on the side of their trucks "Made in America"?
yeah, yeah.
That
Didn't
was in our
last.
lifetime, right?
Yeah. that's- Oh man, I am young still. Thank
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I was worried about that.
Yeah, but I don't think it's dead. I think it's making a comeback. I think the this focus on reshoring things is a little foolhardy, right? Uh,
Yeah, tell me why. Why do you think that?
well, number one, like I talked about the know-how. I can't move that plant from outside of Hong Kong to Des Moines, Iowa. Why
Yeah,
not? Okay, it
yeah,
went from Des Moines. It went from Des Moines, Iowa, in 1983. Those
yeah,
guys are dead and gone. The people that ran that plant are gone. Their grandchildren are working for Wells Fargo now. They're not
yeah,
looking to be tooling guys.
yeah,
That's kind of the main thing. That our know-how is gone. And then you had several colleges, universities kind of draw back from manufacturing, where we weren't putting on industrial engineers or manufacturing engineers. I think one time we put out like engineering, we were like a top 2 or 3 in the world forever.
yeah,
Now we're like
yeah,
in the top 20. You know,
yeah, yeah,
there's more engineers that come out of China, and again, it's the
yeah,
focus, right? Um, because the Chinese figured out, like, hey, yeah, we can put 1,000 people in this plant, where in the United States there were 200, and still make money. But man, we can make a lot of money if we got it down to 200 like the
yeah,
Americans do, right?
yeah,
So, you have that shaping up, and then the rise of the middle class in China. Anyway, what you were asking me about was why can't it move back here? Well, number one is the intellectual cost. I think number one, and number two, we've turned these brownfields into greenfields into, like, if you look at, again, I'm going to go back to Pittsburgh. The Homestead Works was the largest steel mill in the world. It's a shopping mall now.
yeah,
So what are you
yeah,
going to do? You're not going to, say we want to make pig iron back here in the United States. Well, it's not going to go there, right?
yeah,
Where is it going to go? And then you have the other portion of it is, what do we want to make here? Which I think, this is a democracy. This is a capitalist society. Like I said, the managerial capitalism and the really post-war thing kind of drove the economy, drove the middle class, and then you had the financialization of the United States in the 80s. That kind of hollowed that out, and that's like, well, we're going to make this where we can make the most money, and that's good, except for, do I always want a $50 40-inch television, right?
yeah,
Is that the meaning of life, right?
yeah,
And I'm not sure if that's the case, but again, I'm not sure you can make things in the United States. I just think about, let me take that back. Not that you can't make things in the United States. I just don't think that we have the intellectual know-how to get it done on a scale that you've seen China go on the last 20 years.
yeah,
I just don't see it.
yeah,
And as much push we have, like, well, man, I want to be a welder. Okay.
yeah,
You know what I want? I want cobot welders.
yeah,
I don't want welders
yeah.
anymore.
Yeah,
You
welding's
know,
hard. It's a dirty, nasty job,
it's
right?
hard.
And
It's
I've never met a
dangerous.
welder who never said, I want to move out of this job eventually, right, and become a manager or something like that, right? Get an office job,
Hank,
And
it's
I
little
mean,
things
it's
like, we'll have the whole PPAP on these guys, right? They're
Yeah.
fully enclosed, and guys
Yeah.
still get things in their eyes. And again,
Yeah.
you don't get that anywhere else, right?
No.
But
No.
yeah, we do need welders. I think again, I think we need more cobot welders, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I'm when I cobot for your audience, I would say those are robot welders.
Yeah.
Very easy to program now. Again, that's stuff that was developed here, and maybe that's the direction we go in.
Yeah. So, couple thoughts there. I think you make some really really good points about ultimately why some of that manufacturing is not going to come back. I'd also say one of the challenges that we have, at least recently, is we tend to be, from a policy standpoint, swinging back and forth all the time, right? Every
Right.
4 years or 2 years, right? We're in this cycle where we have different investments. China has the advantage of being able to really look at the long term, right? It's like an ownership model. It's like private equity versus a family, right?
Yeah.
Family's
I mean,
looking way out. We're looking short term,
Hank,
and we don't have the infrastructure now
you hit
to
the
be
nail
able to
on the
do a
head
lot
there.
of this,
We,
right?
we have tax incentives and credits to move to electric vehicles and kind of decarbonization of our energy,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So we've been doing that for 10, 12 years. Once the leader, now we're number two, right? And then we come in and in 6 months we throw it all away. We're not going to do that anymore. It, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
a lot of people spend billions, trillions of dollars to invest in that, and I mean, what does the market hate? What do you hate? I hate constant change, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to go into the grocery store. I'm like, well, the milk is here, right? And it's
Yeah.
the same thing with this is what our policy is going to be as a country, and we've developed that over years. And we throw it all out. I just, I think we should be nimble. Don't get me wrong, but you know, a lot of Tesla's money was made because we're giving $7,500 back to whoever wants to buy it, right?
Sure. Yep.
That made it more economically feasible for people to take a newer technology. So
Yeah.
but again,
And the cafe standards, I was in aluminum at the time, right? That drove a huge growth in automotive aluminum and lightweighting of vehicles, right? Because we said, all right, you got to be at a certain, miles per gallon threshold. And you kind of start throwing that away. And the company spent, billions of dollars over multiple years to build up that infrastructure. And those are all good advancements, right? But we're taking the short term view on that stuff.
Do we really think that General Motors or Ford are going to go away from EV, especially when China has overtaken us, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
relatively quickly.
Yeah.
And I hopefully there's somebody in policy making that understands, like, it's really a battle of, this isn't East versus West. This is their form of pseudo capitalism versus our form of capitalism, and
Right.
who's going to win that? Again, we're in a geopolitics era. We just want to talk about the weld shop around the corner,
Yeah.
but it's all affected, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we. But I do think American manufacturing is strong. There are talented people. I get concerned that there are not as many mentors for the younger people that want to get into it. And I'm talking about the people that are going to be middle managers, the real drivers of the companies, right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. You and I could sit there and say, hey, you go do this, you go do that.
Yeah.
That's not how the world works, right? It's the middle managers that drive that. They have the ethos of the company. And those are the types of guys that I get concerned about. And, typically those are the ones that need the most work, that need the most polish, need the most sandpaper. So
one of the things, and I just want to tell the listeners, right? I mean, one of the things I love about how working with Jason in the past is just how he just gets to the point of stuff. I want to. I think one of the interesting things, the new company you're with, Cadrex, right, is a call it metal fab
Correct.
company, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And if I look at metal fab, and I've been in metal fab before, right? If I look at it, it's a great leading indicator of overall the economic health of that part of manufacturing, right?
Right.
Because you're making stuff all the way as inputs, for sub assemblies, for stuff that people are buying, all the way to making stuff for the plants themselves, right? As
Right.
they go to build out, their facility.
Right.
So maybe tell me a little bit about you guys and kind of, a little bit of your perspective about what you're
Yep.
seeing in your growth and your market. That's leading indicator as to why you
Yeah.
why you were able to give us that good education on the overall manufacturing growth.
So Cadrex is a contract manufacturer, mostly of sheet metal and plastics. We have a small plastic injection molding component out in Denver that I run in the entire company. We have 22 facilities, one of which does plastic. We work primarily, primarily you name it, it's aerospace, automotive, heating, cooling, power generation, data storage, huge part of us, and then gaming.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Gaming.
Oh
So
really? Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
What do you guys do for gaming?
The internal components of
Okay.
the smaller portions. Now the plants that I run are our customers are like Dover Fuels, which makes gas pumps,
Yeah, yeah.
Tesla, not the cars, but the solar components and the power
Oh, okay,
generation
okay.
stuff, right?
All right,
So,
cool.
we have large brake presses, lasers, and what have you here.
Hmm.
And then my other facility has a large stamping operation. So that's truly, truly old school. Both of them are
Yeah,
very old school.
yeah,
But
yeah.
our philosophy now is because Cadrex is a contract manufacturer, but we are designed to build, right? So we want the entire supply chain with the customer comes in and says, "Hey, I have this problem." We have engineers to set up and say, "Hey, this is our fix on this," and then we go to market with it with them.
Yeah.
We're owned by a private equity firm, Core, out of Chicago. Um, of my other private equity firms I work with, they're slightly different. They're hands on where they need to be hands on, hands off where they don't need to be, which is
Yeah, yeah,
instead of
that's
hands
nice.
on everything. Um,
Yeah,
but what I would tell you is that the mantra right now is create more capacity and we will fill it. So I would say that our economy is going pretty strong. As this is kind of a core element to those industries are in there that
okay.
we the orders come in, we've got to fill them. Our without any moving on time delivery around here, you know, um, we have to fill it,
Yeah,
and proverbially we're going up and to the right on it, which is good.
yeah,
And those are our targets. And it's you would think metal bending is a dying industry here, but because of the power generation and data storage, and really aerospace and automotive, it's what we're making for them now, right?
yeah.
It's really taking off.
And I think for the listeners, right, who are probably wondering, well, that seems like stuff that could be moved overseas, right? I think the key to your commentary was that you do design to build, right?
Yes.
And so a lot of the parts that you're doing, right, custom design, you're putting it on a program, designing it, and then it's going out to the shop floor,
Yep.
oftentimes within a week or days to get cut and bent and very custom stuff, right?
Yes.
And that can't be done when you've got a 2 month supply chain to get it over from China if you're
And,
going to do
and
it
the other
cheap,
thing
right?
is that, and this, Asia, they want the quantity by the container.
Yeah.
I'm going to send 100 panels a week to Tesla. 100, just 100. I'm going to a week from my facility in San Antonio to Austin, or my
Yeah.
facility in San Antonio to California. That's what we're doing. You're not getting 10,000 panels. You're going to get 100 from us, right?
Right. Right.
And the other thing is, and I think what makes this a really good industry is because of the technical specifications on this.
Mhm.
As you know, sometimes you get things from China, they are not exactly to spec. They're kind of it, right? And like you said, they're measuring everything in weight and what they can move out. Um, if there's a problem, right, we can react to that.
Yeah.
We can react to that in hours.
Yep.
And I think that's, we don't want to make mistakes, right? But if we do make a mistake, we can take that back. We
Yeah.
can fix it, right?
Yeah.
And I will say this: the one thing I see here is our quality systems feedback is much more robust than other places I've been because of that, right?
That's good.
Because we're designing it, we're helping design it. I shouldn't say it like that. We help design it, and then we nest it, and then we get it out to the customer. So
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I'm going to throw out another statistic, right? So 64% of U.S. manufacturers say they're actively investing in automation or AI-based
yep,
technologies, right? One of the issues sometimes I bump into with private equity owned companies, right? They buy a bunch of smaller assets, roll them up all into one company. There's regular integration issues.
yep,
But the fundamental challenge, a lot of those companies have old assets, right? That and effectively you're reborrowing on the value of those assets, right?
right,
So now you've taken out a big loan, you don't have the kind of working capital flexibility you otherwise would to be able to put into CapEx. And part of the challenge then becomes, well, there's other up and comers. If there's technology that changes substantially, another up and comer can come and take your lunch tomorrow, right?
that's correct.
Talk to me a little bit about kind of your strategy and where you're finding you're able to kind of keep that competitive advantage.
Yeah. Remember when I talked about the middle management and the you
Hmm.
know the foresight to do things, and so I'm an old hand, right? So I came into these facilities, I looked at them, and Hank, we're bending some metal here that weighs somewhere around 300, 350 pounds. We have three guys moving it around. I look at that and I'm like, well, that's crazy. So I talked to our HSE guy, health and safety guy. And I sent him a video. It's a minute 40. I said, I mean, how many injuries do we get off of this, right? Either we pay for it now, or we pay for it later. So we're investigating getting a robot in there, and our private equity firm behind that is, hey, let's go ahead and do that. You know, let,
Yeah.
let's investigate that again. It's a little bit of a sea change for me, right? I'm used to, hey, you make deal with what you got, and worst comes to worst, we'll invest some money in. We'll look for a 2010 version of what you need, but you're not getting a 2025 version of it, right?
Right.
So it's a little bit different, and I'm pretty
Yeah.
pleased with that.
That's good.
But what I do look at here is that the triumvirate for capital expenditures are safety, quality, and then cost, right? If I can improve all three of those, which we can do with this robot we're looking at, that's a no-brainer for anybody. And everybody wants to buy this
Yeah.
after Core gets out of this investment, right?
Right.
I think that they're open to that, but there are many firms that are like, nope, we're not going to touch that stuff. So, but we're looking in automation, obviously welding, we already have lasers, so, and those are pretty automated already, right? I mean, those are,
Right.
that the days of those things not being, those are long gone. I mean, we have sheet movers and everything. We just have the fork trucks going in and out. But the automation, I think, on our press brakes and on our stamping machine is going to be the next step here. And again, you know, we talk about, American manufacturing, where it's going. Well, you know, probably ran that press brake with 4 guys or 5 guys before. Now we run it with 1, and we have like 2 helpers, right? That
Right.
water water spotters, right?
Yeah.
We run this with a robot. We'll have 1 guy running 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Which,
it's not going overseas,
yeah.
but we're
Yeah.
not going to employ. And again, I think that's some of the other falsehood we were talking about before. Is like, oh, I'm going to build this plant. There's going to be 5,000 guys work there. No, there's going to be 200 guys that work in here, right? Because of the
Yeah.
automation, and you have to do it, right? They don't
Yeah.
call in sick. They don't get hurt.
Yeah.
They don't talk back.
Well, I think one of the interesting things that, as you kind of went through, and we're talking about automation, and I used to have 5 guys doing this. Now I got, one person. I think we're kind of going through that same thing in AI, and maybe
Yeah.
there's parts of businesses that are freaking out about it, but you always kind of got to take a step back and be like, hey, we went through this before, right? I mean,
Yeah.
American manufacturing has been through an automation boom and an efficiency boom. And, look, we didn't take away, we took away some jobs, but we increased efficiency and the growth of those companies. And I'll point back at the 77% of our manufacturing being exports, right?
Right.
So the better we do this, the more volume we pick up. And it's not always just a net of, jobs going out. I'm going to give another statistic about jobs in just a minute, but one of the things I think I'm interested to see is how AI is going to improve the flexibility of the robotics, right? And how that's going to increase
Hank,
the productivity of some of the robotics. So tell me a little bit more about that and your thoughts.
Hank, so in my last company, we bought a cobot robot from Lincoln Electric, right?
Okay.
And we made parts for railroads, freight cars, and we refurbished a lot of it, right? Refurbished the incoming parts. So the Class 1 railroads, the big leasing companies, they would have a need for a coupler. It is not out of service yet, but we're going to extend the life another 10 years, which, that again, it makes sense. And one of the things we had was we had welders who would basically weld on layers of the coupler. The coupler is what holds the train together, and then the back end of these are what's held within the rail car itself. So we called them flat butts, right? So these flat butts were maybe a 5x5 square inch portion of it that gets round down, and that gives you instability in the car and on the track, and you have a greater chance of derailment, right? So those have to be like perfectly square. So we have people and gauges that would weld on that, right? And it took us 25, 30 minutes to weld that. Then we have to grind it, and then we have to send it to heat treat and send it out, right? Well, we figured out that we could do that in about 1 minute with a cobot welder. Now you're talking about AI, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now instead of me doing 1 at a time, I can do 4 at a time. I have a robot that picks that up, puts that into the milling machine, the grinder that makes it perfectly square, and then we take it over. So we've eliminated 4 head count from that. Now I can make, I don't know, 100 a day where I was making 25 a day, right?
Right.
But more importantly, you know who programmed that welder? the welding manager, just touch point.
Yep. There you go.
I mean,
No.
when the guys at Lincoln showed me that, and I was like, is anybody else doing that? It's like, yeah, one of your competitors does that. And I'm like, well, we could really take off with this, right?
Yeah.
But we were talking about AI. Without that AI in there to make sure that touch point goes out, and that's right to the spec of the AAR, which is like the FAA of railroads.
Yeah.
You know, we got to carry thousands of gauges, literally thousands of gauges that a guy has to go measure that all the time. Now we know exactly what's going to be. Exactly. I mean, you know, I think in American manufacturing, it's key, right? I think you have to have AI, especially for things like that. I mean, you have to. It's really a no-brainer on it. You know, forget about the headcount reduction. Just think about the ability to repeat every time the same sequence, right?
Yeah.
And you know, health and safety, you get repetitive stuff. You don't want to do that. Well, here you got a robot. Okay, well, we gotta lube you up every once in a while, but other than that, and then he's thinking for himself every time.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you said that to an employee, man, they wouldn't take that well, right? Hey, okay, you know, to get to the people side, right? There are more than 500,000 open manufacturing jobs right now, right? And I think, you know, when we talk about, you know, headcount reduction and you know, where I look at it as, okay, you know, I've got 4 people who I can then, you know, go scale and go do other things with, right? And for young people, you know, I got a kid who's in college now and he's just starting and you know, I've been working with him about, hey, what are the things that are going to be the skills you're going to need when you grow up? And you know, there's clearly a major skills gap, right? And especially in CNC machining, welding, robotics, digital manufacturing. Yep. And to your point, right? It's like the guy who was your head of welding, right? He used to need to be able to, you know, step in and, you know, put down the hood and go get it done.
Yeah. Why is he the weld shop manager? Because he's the best welder.
Yeah. So now you've got a change in the skills, right? Mm-hmm. And you hear a lot of people talking about it, but I feel like there's a lot of talk, and I'm not necessarily seeing as much of the action from a policy standpoint, seeing the schools popping up, but the skills are, you know, in my mind, right? Those trade schools, we need to invest a lot more than we are right now. And it's not, we don't need to burden them with these kids with a lot of debt. Right. And I mean, all in all, it's great for our U.S. economy. So we got to figure out how to do those. Right. I mean, when you and I were kids, you probably had metal shop or wood shop, right?
Metal shop and wood shop.
Yeah. And there was and it didn't matter. It wasn't like the boys went to home ec and the girls went to. We did home ec and the girls went to metal shop. And you know, this was outside of Detroit. You all had to do it. And I got a great story. We had our metal shop teacher was this guy. We called him Sexy Rexy, and he drove like a beautiful
Camaro,
red. No, close, red. Like 19. It was like probably a 73 or 74 Stingray Corvette.
Oh,
right?
Yeah,
gorgeous car. Still in love with that thing. And well, Sexy Rexy apparently had a reputation around school, and he got into it with the wrong ladies, and his car mysteriously got on fire in the parking lot one day. Yeah, exactly. I know it got a little sideways, right? So anyway, poor Rex. I mean, I don't know what he had to do to hopefully he had good insurance, but it was a.
But he helped you out with the now you can take apart a lawnmower motor, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I got, one of my boys is super handy. He loves taking stuff apart, right?
Hmm.
Unfortunately, the putting it back together is not so bueno, but he's working on that a little bit, but it just means I get to get really good at cleaning up the
He and
garage,
I share
right?
that
So,
same trait. I could take it apart, but I'm like, I should have wrote this stuff down. You know,
yeah.
our metal shop teacher, we called a power tech, Mr. Volker. We
Oh, that's a nice name.
Mr. Volker. Yeah,
All
he
right.
was the guy you would think about would be a power tech metal
Yeah.
shop teacher,
Yeah.
right?
Okay. All right. But back to the kind of talent component. You know, I, you and I have operated in private equity for a while, both of
Hmm.
us, right? And I think you've certainly observed and worked as a consultant too, right? You've
Yep.
observed a lot of skills that make you successful in that type of environment, and ones that you've probably seen a lot of fail. I mean, in your mind, um, the chances are young managers coming up these days, right? Even if they work in a corporate, they may go into this environment at some point. What makes you successful, right? What makes it?
Well, I would say this, and it's kind of a two thing question or thing, and I'm going to touch on the education stuff first, if you don't mind. Um, there are technical schools out there that provide base information that needs to be out there, right? In my old job at Stuckey, um, we had CNC machines, right? But I had no programmers for them. We programmed them in house with one of our other sister companies who was 90 miles away. And if we had a problem, I mean, we got to call them, and then we're not hiring their priority, so I'm down, right? So I went to HR and said, look, here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to get one or two of these guys to get their certification in program for CNC. Now we started that before I left, but you got to have that. You can't just put a CNC. And again, this is part of the falsehood, right? I I have a CNC machine, but do you have people that can run that machine? If something if something goes awry, you have somebody that could quickly reprogram that machine. And if you don't, that's just a paperweight for you, right?
Yeah.
So those types of things, and again, I think that's part of the reason you have so many open jobs. And the other thing I think we have so many open jobs is, you know, there aren't manufacturing facilities in these. Not that I want them back in the neighborhood, but you can't just go walk to them anymore. Now they're out in East Kabum somewhere, right? Or
Mhm.
they're in a industrial part of town where kids don't go. You don't go. You don't. eh, Again, when you and I were growing up, like when I grew up, your dad worked at Westinghouse. Your dad worked at Consolidated Coal. So he's either working on nuclear type stuff or power generation. He was taking coal out of the ground, or he worked in the couple steel mills that were close to us, right? U.S. Steel, Edgewater Steel, Allegheny, Ludlam. But there was some know-how. I would say know-how, or some. You understood that, right? You know where the plan is. People don't see that anymore, so I don't think that's top of mind, right? You know, I I just think that that's a big falsehood, right? We've got to get people more interested in that. You got to have, like you said before, policy. It says, hey, this is the direction. Here's how we're going to do this funding. Even kickbacks to the company. Say, hey, look, if you send your kids to CCAC, CCAC should have alt. That's the Community College of Allegheny County. They should have just CNC maintenance tech type things. You know, uh, teaching English at CCAC. No, that that's what the high school is for, right? This higher learning got to be you got to be able to feed the workforce. Much more like
Yeah.
Europe, much less like what it's become. Um, then
Yeah. Yeah.
then go on the other portion of it. So I think the trade schools, like I said, what we do is, or what I've done in the past is try to partner up with local trade schools and say, hey, look, if you get certified in this, I'm going to give you X amount of raise on it. You get certified in, but then you got to stay here for 2 years or 2.5 years, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you got to pay that back to us.
Yeah.
I've never met anybody that said no.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to send me to school and you're going to give me a raise? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hank, it's not that hard, because again, to our earlier point, you have to re-educate people into what we do today. You can't just be like, oh, you go through high school, then you go out and you're going to work in the mill somewhere. Those jobs are over with, right? When you start as a laborer and you work your way up, because you're going to spend 3 years there doing what, right?
Yeah.
I need CNC guys. I need welders. I need basic electricians, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Electricity, it matters, right?
Yeah,
anyway,
we have a huge. I mean, just the infrastructure of the U.S. right is going to need a major overhaul to stay competitive, right? In the coming years,
Yeah.
And we have the least productive Congress over the last 20 years of in history. And so what concerns me a little bit is that, your points about, hey, we need this, and we need the investment in these industries to be able to look out further than, 2, 3, 4 years, right? The election cycle. We need, representatives who have the long-term interests of their populations in mind. And so to create that stable investor environment where, I can build a school and I get an ROI on that, right?
Yeah.
I can, fund the people who are then going to build the houses and all of the infrastructure that we need. Electricity alone is a big one. My son is looking at, they're taking a course on nuclear power, right? And I think there's a lot to be said when you really look back at how the bad rap nuclear power got, right? Yeah. After 3 Mile and a couple of the other incidents, Fukushima, et cetera.
Chernobyl. I mean, that was bad.
Chernobyl. I would argue that Chernobyl was some human bad decisions.
Well,
right?
It's their political infrastructure. You can't, no bad news, right? And then this is what you get.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it would have been a lot less bad, right? If they had come out with it, but basically they were forced to. I learned an interesting fact off another podcast that the people who discovered that Chernobyl or publicized that it happened was, I think, actually it was either in Sweden. I think it might have been Sweden, right?
Testing the air.
Yeah, they're testing the air, and they're like, "Uh-oh, something happened," and then they tracked it all the way back to Chernobyl, right?
Right.
That's nuts.
Right.
That's crazy.
I don't know if you ever saw that. Again, we're going to get off kilter, but if you ever saw that HBO thing, Chernobyl, you should watch it.
Oh, really? Okay.
You would love it.
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
All right. It's on my list. Okay. Good.
Yeah. One of my favorite lines there, and again, this is funny. So when so even the guy in the control room who basically leads the plant says, "Well, that can't happen. It blew up. Can't happen, right?" So he goes to like this bomb shelter and he talks with the plant man or the district director and then the local Soviet committee, and they asked for what the readings, the radioactivity is, and it was at a lower amount. Well, the reason it was a lower amount because the Soviet Union only distributed dosimeters to a certain amount. And the one guy goes, "Well, that's not great. It's not horrifying, but it's not great." Well, it's putting out 2 nuclear bombs every minute, right? I mean, that's the reality of what was happening.
Wow.
But that's the funny.
Wow.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not terrible, or it's not great, but it's not horrifying.
Yeah. But it's
how you measure it, right?
That's it's amazing how that stuff happens, right?
But you're right. To put us back on track here, but you're right. nuclear energy, just for giggles, we've put 2 in the last 30 years in the United States. I think China's building 12.
Yeah.
China's actually keeping Westinghouse, which was
Yeah.
the world's provider for nuclear power plants, really the first and the best, most cutting edge. Every nuclear submarine built in the United States, every nuclear carrier built in the United States up until it was sold in the mid 90s was a Westinghouse reactor.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
were Navy nuke guys where I lived, like on my street all the time, because that's
Yeah.
where they built them. Anyway, said all to say this, but yeah, so China, again, they're building 12, and we're talking about firing up coal plants again. And again, economically, coal plants, here's the problem with that. You got to dig it out of the ground, you got to transport it to a plant, and then you got to burn it. All of these things don't happen with natural gas, or natural gas you could pump pipelines, right? And then nuclear energy, you transmit. How about these data centers are buying these old reactors?
Yeah. Yeah.
2 in Pennsylvania. I
Yeah.
think Microsoft has the one, and Amazon's buying the other one.
That I think is going to be the driver of the next wave of nuclear energy, is
Yeah.
to the point where actually they're going to say, you know what, I can't rely on the public grid for this, and it's worth it for me to just go
Absolutely.
ahead and fire one up, and it's, it'll be my source.
Yep.
And they're extremely reliable. I mean, you look at the quality of and the safety record, since those incidents, and how freakish they were. But all said and done, it's killing a lot less people than Kentucky coal is, right? So,
Right. Well,
I think you're.
it's crazy that we got away from it. I get it. I think really what really killed nuclear power was, like, you had 3 Mile Island, then you had like the China syndrome. Remember that movie? It
Yeah,
came
yeah,
out like at the same time. I mean,
yeah,
totally coincidentally. But it's
yeah,
just like
yeah,
people are, yo, you can't do that. Of course
yeah,
they built a nuclear power plant on a fault line in California. No, they didn't do that, right? I
yeah,
mean, it's
yeah.
just anyway.
So the long and the short of it, back to the overall, our infrastructure is going to need an overhaul, right?
Absolutely.
And we've got a lot of how that overhaul is going to happen is going to be American manufacturing is going to be the ones who's going to build it, right?
Right.
And so I think all the way from cement to steel to a lot of the other part, that's going to be a really important part of driving our growth, but we need the economic policy in place to be able to put that infrastructure back,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that's where I'm super frustrated with all of the people who say, oh, we want American manufacturing, we want the middle class, and yet here's these things that are served up on a plate to these representatives, and they can't get anything done, right? And it's just really frustrating for me to watch that in our day and age,
Yeah,
right?
it's become very ideological that one side is right and one side is wrong. Again, diametrically different, even from the 90s to now. It's just, look, it's you got to do what's right,
Yeah, yeah.
But
All right, so I'm going to move on to another topic around you were a consultant, and I think one of the things I remember very, very clearly when I got into consulting was kind of cutting your teeth into the pace of it, and really learning how to problem solve, because you had to exercise
quickly.
that muscle over and over, right? Corporate, I
Yeah.
feel like unless you're in a certain role, you're not problem solving over and over and over again. You
Yep.
get into kind of the just steady state maintenance side. So what do you think from your prior life as a consultant, right? What were you able to transfer to your corporate roles, and kind of what of those skills do you wish you could just magically transfer to your team, right? Like the Matrix, like I know Kung Fu, I
Well,
know whatever, right?
you know, and this is something I say all the time. The one constant out there is leadership. I don't care if you're flipping burgers or you're making panels or making wheel sets or cabinets. You need multiple people taking leadership roles. And what does that mean? That means that they shouldn't be concerned if they fail. The only reason if they fail and they don't learn from that mistake, that's problematic, right? And but I would tell you, like I said, I'm agnostic to the industry, but I'm orthodox to the process, right? I'm a Toyota production guy. I mean, I'm a lean guy, um, but you have to be pragmatic in your application of those. Everybody gets caught up on, well, everything should be JIT. But if I can't, that is the end item. The beginning item is, can I change over that piece of equipment in 20 minutes? Can I do that? If I can't really go to JIT, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can, but I'm gonna have to carry, so it's gonna be JIT light. I'll be better at it, but that
Right.
pragmatic approach to things, I think is the transferable skill set. And then you have to lead, and you have to show people how to lead. And I think sometimes we're just devoid of that. I'm not sure that this financialization of America has helped out, right? Because leadership now is like, well, I have to, whatever we have to do to make money tomorrow, we're going to do it.
Right.
And I'm not sure if that's the best way to do it. I mean, you got to have some sort of, I don't want to sound like a communist, but you have to have some 5-year plan at least, right? These guys in the
Right.
60s, they're like, in 10 years this is where we want to be, and we have to take these process steps, and we have to have these types of infrastructure type things that go on. And now it's like, what can we do tomorrow? Next quarter. What
Yeah.
do we get next quarter, right?
Yeah.
And but again, you could be, you have to have leadership at the ground level on up. And there's something that I use, not my classmate, a guy who's 2 years older than me. He was a full bird in the Marine Corps, and he has a book called Marine Maxims. And I distribute that book to all of my supervisory and plant managers. And then part of our operations meeting every week is somebody gets a quote, and what does that mean to them?
Right.
We're not reviewing numbers. We're not action items. What does this mean to you, right? Just to be like, man, you guys got to think outside of the four walls here. Got to do
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know. Those are the type of idiosyncrasies that I have, but it's like we've got to be able to translate the numbers into what really happens, right?
Right.
I'm a Toyota production system guy. My experience, because no one hires me for my boyish good looks, my experience
Don't
is,
sell yourself short. Yeah.
I know I'm a handsome guy, I get it, but my experience tells me that everybody wants the buzzword. Everybody, I got to have that buzzword. Got it, JIT. I have to do it. But the reality is, can we do it? Or what cost is that going to be? Because I'm pretty sure that Deming and Ono said, hey, didn't say, hey, we're going to do this regardless of what it costs. No,
Right.
no. It has to make sense. It has to make financial sense, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So what is leadership? You use the word leadership a number of times. What does leadership mean to you? Like what do you think kind of the bare bones quality of what you think is important for a leader, right? And leadership styles. Is it a Hannibal leadership? Is it a Caesar leadership? Napoleon leadership? right?
Well,
What is leadership, and where do you think, what do you see that kind of skill, um, maybe it's lacking in today's, future younger generations, or maybe you see, versions of it popping up, right? Where
yep,
you see kids who are like, oh yeah, that kid's a leader right there, and those are the attributes they're showing, right?
exactly. So this is a pretty common speech that I give to whoever, right? And I don't want people to think of me as their boss or their boss's boss's boss, right? What I want everyone to understand is that the customer is king, right? That's the number one thing. The other thing is that they are the prince and princesses of our company. They have that contact, that relationship with the customer, right? So don't think of me as your boss per se, right? Think of me of how can I help you? Every time I end a meeting, it's like, here's what we talk about every day. What do we see? What didn't we like? What do we want to change for tomorrow? And how can I help? How can I help? Right? And you establish that rapport with those guys, and they understand, well, this guy's actually here to help me. But when I talk about that leadership principle, that servant leadership model that I was just talking about, customer's king, the prince and princess of the company face them. They know what it takes to serve the customer, right? If they can put in a fact-based manner to me what it would take to serve that customer better, it's my job to provide that for them, right? That's what I do, right? That's my real job. My
Right,
job is not
right.
to be like, hey, you go do this, you go do that. No. Hank, I did that early on in my career, and I lost the rest of my hair, failed relationships. Yeah, I made a ton of money, but you can't function like that for middle-aged guys like us. You can't
Right.
do that, right? But that's what I think very clearly is, what can I do to help you, right?
Yeah.
But you have to teach them. You got to take time. Again, this is the leadership time. You got to go in their office, out to the shop floor. I don't care if you're a general manager, VP, or whatever. You got to go out there to where they are. They don't come to you. You go to them. You see what they see, right? You can suggest things. Maybe they get an idea. Maybe that's a spur of the moment. They're like, "Cool, I caught lightning in a bottle here." But
Yeah.
and you make sure that they understand that you give a shit,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? That's
I like it. Yeah.
and I got to tell you, you and I've been around the block. There's a lot of people, they don't care. They're
Yeah.
even at my level, they're clocking in, clocking out. You know,
Pri- Pride is a big part of it, right? I see, a good leader, be it they're the leader of their cell, or, a middle manager, or all the way to the top, right? Having, pride in what you do, and what you're doing every day, and be, caring about the people. I want you to be safe and come home the same way you got to work, right? Um, those are the things that I think are really important for employees to see, and they emulate those behaviors, right?
right?
And so someone who can show that pride consistently every day, is it. Now it's I
Hank,
think it's difficult when you get to the financial engineering part, right?
yeah.
And you put somebody in a place where, there's a lot of, unfortunately, I think there's a lot of folks in American manufacturing who are really struggling to make ends meet where current wage levels are, right?
Oh, no doubt
And
about that.
U.S. companies are making bigger profits than they've I wouldn't say
Hank,
they've ever made, but
yep.
there's some record profits out there.
Hank, it's Stucky. One of the first
How
things
do,
I did
yeah,
was like, I won't give out the wage rate we were given, but it was disturbing, right? And we're wondering why the turnover is so high. Well, do the
yeah,
comp in this area, right? Yeah, I got a union mill right down the road. I got another union shop across the way. Not that unions are the greatest things since sliced bread. I think, again, they've been bastardized like everybody else. But, you know, these guys are making significantly more. These guys see this, You can't have constant turnover, right? And
Yeah.
look, just touch on leadership again, because I do think wage is a factor. Look, I think wages within reason need to be studied better, but that's not the sole reason the people are flighty, right? The other thing is, just like I talked about, do you talk to these people? Do they feel like that they make an impact on what you do, right? That's my
Yeah.
contract. Like I said, you're the prince and princess. You tell me what goes on. You tell me what I need to do that, right? We'll shape how you form that question and how you're going to answer it. We'll work on that together, right? But importantly, we got to take care of the customer, right? And
Hmm.
Mr. Press Operator, you're the guy that's going to do that. You're the integral part of this.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's key. And then again, sometimes you go some places and the wage rate is embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's it's embarrassing. I don't want to air dirty laundry, but I've been in places where you ask a shop floor guy to come up to the office and he's doing something completely different, then you're paying him like an hourly guy, and he's a buyer, he's a planner, he's a something else. Well, why did
Yeah.
so we traded him for being a punch operator. Now he's planning out the shop floor, and we didn't feel it was necessary to give this guy a bump. So what hope do these people out on the shop floor have?
Hmm.
What do they care?
Yeah.
They're going to
Why?
continue to punch that clock.
Yeah.
Who cares? I'm out of
Yeah.
here. It's
Where's the pride? Yeah.
shift ends at 3, 2:59. 2:55. I am at the clock. Boom, I'm out. See you guys. Have a great one.
Now, one of the things I love about, kind of the position I'm in right now, very fortunate to be, a partner in a small firm. And so we can make our own decisions, and
Yeah.
we know two things, right? You got to be able to sell and take care of your people. Your people will deliver. Consulting's all about people. And I think that, one of the things that kind of drove me from my last position was some of the human resource issues, and part of that was really the pay, around some of the people, because effectively, because of inflation, right? My team, I think I did the calculation, over a 2-year period. 1 year was a 6% and 1 year was a 3% effective wage decrease,
Yeah.
right? Because they weren't keeping up with inflation,
Right.
right? And then when you're fighting, with them about that, and there's, the PE company's going to get their money, right? That they're going to get theirs. Here's a pot, and yeah, it's smaller than you think. Divvy it up however you want to, right? And fundamentally, it didn't square with me, right? So, conversely, I love your comment about you're the prince and princess, right? And at the end of the day, if you pick up on the nuance of that, it's they get to share in the success. And so, we've got a couple of folks who I've worked with for a really long time now, one for 13 years and one for 5 years. And they're absolutely amazing. They're rock stars. My clients eat them up, right? And they want more. And when our consultants are successful and make our clients successful, and the client turns around and says, "I want more," they share in that profit, right? And it makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
I mean, they helped sell it. So, the flexibility to be able to reward them, and by the way, I mean, they're making 30% more than they did in their last role, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very, very different dynamic when you have that, right? And first and foremost, you wake up, you have pride in your job, but you also have the economic stability to be able to do things, for your family, do things for your kids, do things for your loved ones, do things for your community, that you're not having to scrape for food stamps, and
Y-
that
y-
it's a enormous difference maker for
Yeah, I
for the
mean,
pride they bring to it, right?
yeah, like I said, a great portion of people are driven, motivated by money. The other one is, do they matter? And if you can't make them matter, then they're just going to keep asking for more money, and they're going to price themselves out, right?
Yeah, yeah,
You know, and it's tragic, but it happens, right? And again, it goes to the instability of the American manufacturing workforce. That's why there's 500,000 people looking for jobs. I bet you if you peel away the layer of the onion there, those people, the jobs that are out there, I bet you the turnover on those jobs is very high, right?
yeah,
And the
yeah.
sectors
That's a
they're
really good
in,
point. Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
I just that's my again that's my not
yeah,
my intuition, but my experience tells me is that well, and again, here's the other thing, man, and this is the truth. This is the truth. If you have a high TRIR or DART, in other words, you're
yeah,
terrible at safety,
yeah,
you are an unproductive facility. There's no every time I go into it, I'm like, your TRIR DART is in the double digits. I know that you're not making money because no one cares.
yeah.
You know, because if you can't take care of yourself and the others around you, how are you going to take care of
Yeah.
the king? They don't care. You
It's
know,
it's a great
so
point.
that correlation is all. And again, I could be wrong, but I'll tell you a funny story about statistics, right? So my cousin is going to the Citadel, right? And he is a freshman, a knob. And I said, hey, you know, you wanna you wanna keep your hotel room there till like Tuesday? And she's like, oh, he'll be fine. I'm like, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you about this, but I got 187 years of data that tells me that second day of breakfast, like 50% of the freshmen drop out. So you can take it from me, who's a grad and who went there, or we can take it from you, Aunt Deb. You know, it's like, I mean, don't listen to me. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
statistically, it's
yeah,
going to happen, right? You should
yeah.
hang out. Don't make him call
Yeah.
an Uber to go back up to Greenville, right? I mean, come on.
So that's a good point. I wonder how many of those 500,000 open jobs there are that are like, HR knows that statistically I've got a full workforce, but, you know, 4 or 5 people are gonna leave in the next month,
Yeah.
and I got to have a bench of people waiting, ready to fill that spot,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So that's interesting.
It's the wage
Yeah,
is low, the job is dangerous. Uh, it, it's a nothing job, right? We're still
yeah,
putting, you know, here's the other thing I think you want to look at there is, uh, it, 500,000 is a lot of people, regardless, right?
hmm
Is that what if we filled all those positions? What is our economic output then? Does GDP go up? You know, again, I'm just being devil's advocate here. You know,
yeah, yeah.
so
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. That's interesting. All right, so last question. I'm going to put you on the spot for a prediction. It can be economic, tech, industry specific, culture, whatever. Right? Don't be afraid. What do you Jason Lhota of the future, right? Think is going to be think is a relevant prediction in the next 5, 25, 50 years.
I think American manufacturing will bounce back to a level. I do not think that onshoring will be as successful for a myriad of reasons. One is we're just not we don't have the infrastructure to do that. We have shopping centers where facilities used to be. They have the prime real estate now. I mean, plus it just takes a lot to start new facilities. I think that's the one thing that it will bounce back. You will have some onshoring, but it'll be selective into um, certain industries that have to be here. I think that's the one thing that's for sure. I I I do think that the tariffs are not going to work out for us economically. I think people have to understand that the tariff is just a transfer of money from one entity to another entity, and we're affected by it right now. I mean, look, we're hiring a whole staff here at Cadrex just to deal with tariffs, how best to deal with them. Again, that's great that we're doing that, but those are jobs that were created out of a crisis, right? And I don't think those are ever sustaining jobs. And I think the third thing, I do think that America, we will get back into nuclear energy by hook or by crook.
I like that.
Right?
All right.
That nuclear energy will make a comeback. We have onshore right now the technical know-how. We make the best reactors on Earth. Everybody buys our stuff except us. Everybody buys our stuff except us. It's crazy, right? I think we like.
Well, the U.S. government buys a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the irony of the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
We don't do a lot of public projects with it, but every major vessel, sub, anything we goes out with the reactor right now, right?
Yeah.
So
we're building I think 11 more nuclear aircraft carriers, and I don't know how many subs, but they're all going to be nuclear powered. I mean, it's just, we do that. It's a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you do that, right?
yeah.
You don't need any strategic refueling stops anymore. We just throw a reactor in it from wherever. So,
all right, I'm gonna go buy some Westinghouse stock later this afternoon, right? Let's see.
Well, they're owned by a private equity firm out of Canada, so.
Oh, okay, all right. I can't even do
I
that.
think they're still owned by them.
Maybe the secret's to buy get into the business of what parts and infrastructure they're going to need, when that kind of realization happens, right?
Yeah, if you think about, if you would put all the parts of Westinghouse back together, I mean, they'd be one of the world's largest companies. The Westinghouse Air Brake, Wabtec, they're the largest producer of rail engines, locomotives in the world. Their big thing is they're going battery powered engines. Think about that.
Yeah.
Actually, on the news, the Coke mill in Clairton had a little problem here a few days ago, but the switching engines that go between the plants there, those are made by Wabtec, batteried.
Yeah.
So think about that.
Yeah.
A huge carbon, hugely environmentally unfriendly place. They run on clean fuel.
Right.
So
real quick, I mean, we got a few minutes, but I want to pick your brain on this since you were kind of in the rail world for a while. One of the things that frustrated me when I was in logistics was that rail companies priced themselves just below trucking, right? Because they kind of knew where the price points were and they knew how to make themselves just attractive enough, right? But the problem with supply chain, is there's no flexibility in rail, right? I can't, once I put it on there, it's going to be 7 days and I'm not going to be able to get it off. And the other part was that, when I would do not necessarily the inventory holding cost of having it, for an extra 7 days on rail versus, 3 or 4 days on a truck. At the end of the day, it was a lack of flexibility. But what's surprised me a little bit, since rail got privatized, but roads are public, is kind of how is that infrastructure going to help us really grow? Because it's so much more efficient. It boggles the mind. And it's really frustrating to me to go over to Europe and see how rail is so effective and so efficient for them, and how we can't we can't seem to get our shit together over here, right?
Well, we can't because,
and I think to the point where one of the things that I think we're going to see in the not too distant future is things like we're going to have I think it was me. We'll fix that. So one of the things I think you're going to see in the not too distant future is you'll have driverless trucks. Right. And the way that I would think a lot of that would work would be, listen, I've got depots at major cities. Right. And now I go drop off a trailer at a depot and the driverless truck takes it on the freeway from one place to the other. Right. And now the freeway is not honestly the best place for that. Like to your point. Right. Railway would be much safer, if we could get it together.
Part of the, Europe, they rebuilt their railroads after World War II and made them better. We basically, since the decline of passenger rail, we figured it wasn't important anymore, and we've taken a lot of that rail away that was sitting out there, that still sits out there. We have to invest in that. Right. And to your point, I think what you're going to see here, I forget which two are merging. I think it's Norfolk Southern and UP
BNSF.
or BNSF.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if they merge, right, you're actually going to have for the first time a transcontinental railroad. So you're going to have some of the things that you come up with that are like, hey, I gotta hold this here because I have to transfer it in Omaha, Nebraska from UP to NS or whoever that Missouri Southwest is there in the middle. I think you're going to see that go away. Not soon enough, but I think you'll have that. But you got to really you got to invest back into rail. It is, like you said, it is so much more convenient. It is so much more just logistically. So from our facility,
I'll insert the statistic about how much more efficient rail is. Right, okay. It's something like I don't know. It's 40% more. I can't remember what it is, but it uses
Well, how about this?
It's a ridiculous number. Right?
So my little 200,000 square foot facility in Sharon, Pennsylvania has a little spur, right? Mm-hmm. So when I wanted to move scrap from my location to the mill in Youngstown, we just called in a gondola. And we get those. We process 4 of those a week. Now I'm not putting them on a truck that can carry a quarter of that. So I'd have like 25 trucks in there. No, I just dump them in and go. But that's probably the best way for us to do things. And passengers, same thing. I mean, the reality is like that. I jump on an airplane in Pittsburgh to go to Philadelphia is crazy, right? I should be getting on a high speed
rail.
Rail, right? And then we like Alstom is building all these high speed locomotives, right, buddy?
Yeah.
They're up in New York somewhere. They're building those. Okay, but they can't go 160 miles an hour on our old track. So make it better.
That's right.
It's like we have the capability. It's just like the theory of constraints, right? And we're going on infrastructure that was built in 1880.
Yeah.
Of course. Europe already figured that out. Asia already figured that out. But not here. We got other things to spend our time on, right? And our money.
Yeah. We've got our legislative branch, throwing rocks at each other, trying to figure out who can get the better Instagram snip. So,
right. That's how we measure stuff now.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Hey, listen, what a great episode, man. I really enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun. We went a lot of different places.
Yeah, we did.
But some really good stuff.
We didn't talk about Citadel football in that big game against North Dakota State, but we'll see how that shakes out.
We'll have to have you back on again for sure.
Okay, bud.
For sure. Thanks, man.
anytime, I'll
You
I'll
bet.
always make my myself available for Hank the Tank.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, Jay.